Let's talk about some definitions that we'll be using straight away in the course. So it would be best if we could be on the same page and understand some of these definitions so that we're not getting lost, and of course so we can, again, talk the same language. Now, this is not exhaustive, and I can promise you that we will be developing on these ideas further in the program, and in fact, we're going to have a lot of other definitions. But to start, these are the ones that we must know now because we're going to be using them in the next few videos. So let's start first with the difference between a half step and a whole step. So when we play a note, which we haven't done yet, I just want you to understand this definition because when we get to it here in just a few videos, it's going to be important to know this. So when we play a note and then we play a note that's neighboring it, the distance between those two notes is called a half step. So in this case here, we're going up in pitch from the 2nd fret to the 3rd fret. I'm not expecting that you play this. Really, this is all a matter of just watching me do it and understanding what the definition is. So from here to here is a half step. 2 halves make a whole. So if we're playing at this note and we want to go up a whole step, then we're going to go 1, 2. And that would be the distance of a whole step. So again, 1 fret, moving it up is a half step. But we start at the same place and we go up 2 frets, 1, 2. That's a distance between a whole step, okay? We could do this going down. So if we were here on this G and we were going down a half step, that would also be a half step interval, or the distance between 2 notes is known as an interval. I know up until now, in our lives, an interval has always been related to time, but in fact, an interval, when we're talking about music, is related to the distance between 2 notes. So if I'm here at this note and I'm going down 1 fret, that's a half step. If I'm here at this fret and I'm going down 2 frets, then that's a distance of a whole step. This will be really important when we start looking at the major scale coming up. Now a sharp is, we can use it in different ways. We can use it to say, I'm going to sharp that note, means you're going to raise it, or you can use it as an adjective, like an A sharp. We can use it in different ways. Let's say this is a G note, which it is. If we move this up a half step, then this note would be a G sharp. So basically, the only thing that I want you to get out of this definition is when we sharpen something, we raise it in pitch. When we flatten something, we lower it in pitch. So even though we're not going to get into the minutia, we're not going to get into the detail of the different ways that we can use this, not yet at least, we're going to do it later on. What I want you to understand is to sharpen something means to bring it up. So you can think about like sharpening a pencil, or the top of a peak of a mountain would be sharper than the base. Think about that. Or if we're flattening something, thinking like you're pressing down a balloon. You're making it smaller. That's the only thing that I want you to get out of this right now, because as we move forward, these sharp and flat, we're going to be using them in different ways. So just understand that when we sharp it, we're bringing it up in pitch, we're flattening it, we're lowering it. And so if this were a G, then if we raised it up by half step, then that would be sharpening it. And that also would be called a G sharp. Same thing if we were working backwards, we could call it a G flat. So here's a G. If we lowered it, we're flattening it, but it's also called the G flat, okay? We said that an interval is the distance between one note and the next, and that's true. We're going to be studying intervals more in depth. Things like perfect fifths and perfect fourths, octaves, major third, major sixth, that sort of thing. Nothing to be concerned with yet, just understand that an interval is the distance between this note and this note, okay? Now a chord is 3 or more notes played at the same time. It could be any 3 notes. It could be this, it could be this, or it could be this. Those are all chords because, again, the definition of a chord is 3 or more notes played at the same time. I really want to start you off just with real broad strokes here, because sometimes people can get stuck in the minutia and they think that a G chord has to look like this, when in fact a G chord can look like many different ways. Okay? Any chord can be many different, there can be many different variations of it, okay? So at the end of the day, a chord is 3 or more notes played at the same time. End of story. Now, we're talking about major and minor, which we're going to see later on. What we're talking about is a specific math that is related to a major chord or a minor chord, or a major scale or a minor scale. And when we're talking about major and minor, we're almost always talking about the third of the scale. So if we're playing a scale, which we haven't done yet, in fact, we haven't even played anything yet, just understand that if we play the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, that the major is typically referring to the third, 1, 2, 3. So if we're talking about a major chord, we're talking about a 1, 3, 5. We're talking about those 3 intervals that are derived or extrapolated from the major scale, 1, 3, 5, and if we play those 3 together, we get a major chord. Now, I know for some of you already, I can feel the wheels coming off and you're getting a little bit nervous. I promise you, the only thing you need to understand is that there's a difference between a major chord and a minor chord, and a difference between a major scale and a minor scale. And this video here is not going to cover that. I just want you to understand that there's a difference between them, and the PDF that's attached to this video will give you a little bit more description. So when you see the major chord is described as a 1, 3, 5, we're talking about the major, or we're talking about the 1, the 3, and the 5 taken out of the major scale, and those 3 notes played together, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 1, the 3, and the 5 played together create a major chord. And if we add other 1s and 3s and 5s to it, we also get a major chord. And there's different ways that we can play those 1s and 3s and 5s so that we can play chords all over the neck. But again, at the end of the day, it's just a 1, 3, 5 from that major scale. You don't have to know that right now, just a broad stroke, okay? And then if we wanted a minor chord, then we just take that 3 and we flatten the 3. That's literally it. So 1, 3, 5, since we know what a flat is, we're going to lower it, right? So we take the 3, we're going to lower it a half step. So we use 2 definitions there right away. Now we have a 1, flat 3, 5. 1, flat 3, 5, and that is a minor, a G minor chord. Now for those 2 specifically, I know that some of you are worrying already. There's no need to worry because these are just broad strokes and we're just touching on them right now. They will be explained further in the course, okay? So, friends, hang tight with these. Don't get too overwhelmed, okay? We also have an arpeggio. An arpeggio is when we break up a chord. So when you hear this sort of thing. So here's just a straight chord, but if I were to pick the individual notes in it, that's called an arpeggio, okay? Doesn't matter the pattern, it just means that the notes are broken up. Okay? A major scale is a whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So it's several notes put together. We're going to address that, but essentially if we take any note, and as you're going to see in a future video here, we're going to take those interval distances of half and a whole step and to create a major scale. So we're using several definitions here already. So if I take that whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, I can create a scale as you're going to see further on, okay? Now, again, you'll probably need to watch this over again. Take a look at the PDF that I have for you because it's going to make more sense. It doesn't have to all make sense even after you've watched this video several times and you've watched or you've looked at the PDF, because again, this stuff without context is not going to make much sense to you. But we still have to address these things right away because we're getting ready to start talking about some bits and pieces, and if you don't have these definitions, you're going to be confused. So hang tight. I promise you, it's all going to be revealed to you step by step here. Don't get overwhelmed. Let's keep going.